In this episode, I reflect on my successes and failures in 2024 and use those lessons to plan for 2025. Welcome to Monologues by Hasi. All the way back from 2017, I started making year plans. Now, these weren't always a plan for 1 year. Sometimes the early ones were 3-year plans, then 2-year plans, and then I came down to a 1-year outlook. But I've always believed in the concept of reevaluating my goals and reflecting on the year that's passed. So now that 2025 has come, I had a very long, hard look at my 2024, and 2024 was a special year in particular because it's a year that I did something very different to what I've done for every year prior to this. In 2024, and to be specific, at the end of 2023, I left my job as a software engineer, bought a round the world ticket, and decided to travel the world and work on some goals which weren't conventional. And in this episode, I'm going to go through what I set out to do. So I'm going to go through my 2024 goals at a high level and tell you guys how I actually went with them and what I learned either by achieving them or by failing to achieve them, because there's always an important lesson. And before I get into any of that, there's a reason why when we set goals, even if we don't achieve them, sometimes we're still going to get to a certain percentage of the way. So if you set a goal to run a marathon and you only end up running a half marathon, 21 kilometers, potentially that's more than what you would have achieved if you had not had that goal. So sometimes merely having the goal is good enough. And as I've realized now, more important than goals is to have the identity to identify with whatever it is that you want to become, rather than set an arbitrary goal, because sometimes people hit a goal and then they kind of fall off the bandwagon. Once they achieve that sense of satisfaction, they now go off, and I've done that in the past. The other thing is systems are way more important. It is more important about the person who you identify as and what you do on a daily basis to support that identity, rather than a specific goal. So if your goal is to eventually run a marathon, maybe it's more important that I am a runner and I run 5 days a week. And your training can vary, but having the identity and backing it up with a system that has nothing to do with the goal. You can run 5 days a week and never end up running a marathon. You can run 5 days a week and you can end up running a marathon and doing way more than that. But the fact that you're doing 5 days a week, that's part of the system. The results will come later. They will come in time. Sometimes we just need to get comfortable with doing things that aren't going to have an immediate payoff. And as humans who have evolved to definitely, much like many animals, I look at my dog, they love short-term rewards. But as humans, we have this special ability to delay gratification, and that is what we're kind of tapping into when we start thinking about our goals. So with my goal to travel the world, for example, that actually wasn't a goal from 2024. It wasn't a goal from 2023. It's something I wrote all the way back in 2019, at the end of 2019, when I was planning for what I wanted to achieve in 2020 and 2021. And it's really nice because I look at my 2-year plan from that period, and I had a particular goal, and this is going to sound silly, but it said open a credit card with Qantas point scheme, and I'm not recommending anybody get a credit card for this purpose, but this is just simply what I had written all the way back at the end of 2019 when I was thinking about what I wanted to achieve in 2020, 2021, and that was the goal. And the outcome was utilize points to achieve a medium-term target of a Qantas One World Rewards flight. 132,400 Qantas points plus taxes, and in brackets I wrote 5 cities, 12 months. So this is what I wanted to achieve, and that didn't actually happen. And just to be very clear, the time frame I put to this is only use the credit card when you have a big purchase coming up. So it was open a credit card with a bonus point reward scheme when you knew you had an expense happening, rather than what some people do, which is they get a credit card that earns points and they start spending money that they never wanted to spend in the first place to go ahead and earn points. So you're converting one form of currency, buying services and products you don't need, to go and then earn Qantas points in my case. So this was something where I wrote this down like 3-4 years ago, and it didn't actually happen in the time frame that I wrote those goals for. It happened over 2 years later. It happened in 2024. But that's the nice thing about putting things down on paper is you're not, like I said, you're not always going to hit your goal, but you'll get closer to it, and eventually, hopefully, some of these things might actually start to happen. The other thing that happens, and I'll go into this when I go through my 2024 goals, is that what we want out of life begins to change. And there are many goals that I have on my year plans from years ago that I would not be interested in doing. And there are things that I have on my current goals for the year and longer term goals for 2025 and beyond, that weren't on any of those plans before, because who I am has changed, what I value has changed, my circumstances in life have changed, and all of that feeds into what I want to try and achieve. So let's look at 2024, big year for me. I quit the corporate world for a period of time, and I said I'm going to do a 7-month trip around the world. Now, the one thing I'm proud about myself for doing that is I didn't say just wait one more year. I know a lot of people where they have these things that they want to do with their lives, but they say, you know what, I need to wait just one more year. I need to save an extra $10,000. I need to save. There's something that they're going to come up with to stop them from doing it, even though they could technically do what they really want to do today. And the one thing I'm proud of when I look back at 2024 that has nothing to do with whether I achieved or failed in the specific goals that I listed was the fact that I took the risk and I said, to hell with it. You're not getting any younger. Go do this trip around the world. And I can definitely say I made the very best use of the last year of my 20s. So I turned 30 last year. The fact that I was 29 years old, jet setting around the world, for me it was nice, because as an 18-year-old, somebody who had become very studious towards the end of high school, went into a very long university degree, had all these career aspirations, I never imagined myself to be the person who would spend a year traveling the world. It always seemed to be something that the cool kids would do, take a gap year, and I never just knew how I was going to make that happen myself. So the fact that that all came to fruition and I made that a reality was absolutely incredible. I'm very grateful that I have had the opportunities to be able to travel and to take time off, because I know that not everybody can quit their jobs and do that. People have obligations. So I'm very fortunate and I feel very privileged to have done that in 2024. 2024 for me was all about taking risk. Obviously the risk of quitting my job and losing that stability. And my goals, let's go through them. So the first goal, and I put this right at the top, was 6 digital products launched in 2024. Now, if I go into specifics, it says in 2024, I've launched 6 digital products, which are a mix of free SaaS, so that's software as a service, one-off payment, or hybrid, and collectively generates approximately 2,000, and that's, I should specify, Australian dollars per month in revenue. Now, I wrote benefits to these, and the reason I write benefits is I've always tried to give my goals meaning. So I said, the benefits of doing this is I will further decouple income and time. I will create new opportunities and become a better engineer, salesperson, and marketer. Now, let's think about 6 digital products. Did I actually launch 6 digital products? Let's look at the number. No, I did not. What I actually did was I ended up launching about 3.5 products. And the reason I say 3.5 products is I launched a mobile app. I launched a website to help people submit Senate submissions. I also had a couple of projects which I would consider half projects. Either I only launched them for myself, it's something that I build, and my launch may have just been telling people I've built it and launching a demo. There were also ideas I worked on which didn't come to fruition, but I learned a lot through that whole process. Now, there's a reason why I made 6 digital products a goal the year that I decided to quit my job. Because I said, okay, I'm going to quit my job and I'm probably going to come back into the corporate world, but I have this opportunity where I can really hone in on my skills as an engineer. And the reason I made 6 digital products a goal is I actually felt very insecure about being a software engineer because of the way I came into the field. I was self-taught and I was working in a company and I was doing great. And I love my team. I love the people who gave me the opportunity to end up in that role. But ultimately, I was a person who worked on small parts of a very large system, and I didn't quite have the confidence to do something end to end. So one thing I'm incredibly proud of, even though it's not the best app out there, is the fact that I went through the process of designing something, thinking about the idea, building the product, trying to sell and market it, and eventually launching it to Google's Play Store. So I launched a meditation application called Illuminate Me. I don't think it's particularly good. I still use it today. However, there's still bugs that I know need to be fixed with it. So that's going to be a work in progress. But that's one example of where I am very proud of myself for going through the process and actually building that out, because I learned so much. I think there's so many things you take for granted when you work in a company and you only have to worry about doing your individual task. It's that whole Henry Ford model of you specialize in something. And for me, that was back-end engineering. That was working with databases. That was doing things with business logic and business rules and writing the code to make that all work for the product. But I was very uncomfortable with doing anything that was consumer facing. And what I mean is, you're probably listening to this podcast. You might be listening to it on YouTube. You might be listening to it on a podcast app on your phone. And when you interact with these platforms, either a website or a mobile app, you've got a user interface. So I was always uncomfortable with the visual side of things, and I'm still not quite great at that. But I had to get over my discomfort and actually go and build these things. And when I look back at that whole process, it took me a very long time to actually go ahead and learn those skills. I actually remember there were very specific points where I was stressed out, even about doing something like a landing page, a simple website, and making it aesthetic so people could come and find my product and then eventually download it once it was launched. And these are things I had to get over. I had to get out of that mindset of saying that I'm just somebody who specializes in this area of software engineering, and saying, you know what, if it can be done, I can figure out how to do it and do it. And now that I've gone and done these things, and even though they haven't eventuated in the way that I would have liked to, and I say that with asterisks, because at the start of 2024, I would have loved to got into the end of the year and said, hey, I am generating 2 to 3K per month, and I can now keep adding to this portfolio of products that I've built, and improving those products in my portfolio, so I can eventually just go straight into my own business and not have to go back to the corporate world. But that didn't happen. Despite that, I learned a lot going through that process, because there were many things that I came to appreciate about the process of creation, the different skills involved in creation. So I realized that marketing something and selling something was a lot harder than what I anticipated. Because even for my meditation app, I remember I did 150 days where I was posting, I'm meditating today, here's my app, here's a screenshot of it. I was putting as much word out there, but I didn't really have the skills or the reach to know how to do this properly at the time. And to a certain degree, I still don't, but I have learned many lessons out of this. So when I started off building my digital products, and this is one lesson that I've personally taken, is that, like I said, I started off from a place of insecurity. So I remember I built a desktop application for myself, and I was like, oh, cool, great. You can build a desktop application and you've got a front end that works. Like, this is great. This is a whole application. You can use it and it does something that's useful for you. And when I said, okay, I literally just threw darts at a board, metaphorically speaking, and I would say, okay, great, you're going to build an Android application. And for me, that was attractive because I wanted to build something that was in a big marketplace. So when you put something on Google Play Store, everyone with an Android phone basically has access to that app. They can go download it if it's good. And I said, okay, that's a good goal to start off. But I was thinking about me when I was doing these things. So when I started off building applications and digital products, I thought about myself. And for me, it was, oh, great, I would like to build this and I would like people to use this because it's going to feed my ego. So it was very me-centric. It's going to help me learn the skills of how to do this. And I wasn't thinking about what the benefit was for the customer was. So when I built my meditation application, obviously that's my personal interest. And having read and thought about it a lot more, meditation is a horrible business model from an app perspective. A, it's a saturated market. B, it is not something where you get instant rewards. So meditation is something where you need to do this for months, if not years, to see the benefits of the practice. So even the appeal to the users and the way I was trying to sell it was very unappealing. And I remember one day I got my app into a preliminary status in Android Play Store, and Google basically says you need 20 users to make this happen. And I set out to go and recruit 20 users. So I made LinkedIn posts, reached out to my network, reached out to my old meditation group. And out of all the stuff I did, I literally, other than a handful of friends, I only got one person who signed up to use my application in its testing phase who I did not know. And that's how tough it was. I realized, here's a LinkedIn post with bloody 4,000 views, and that converted one person. So it took me over 4,000 eyeballs to get one person to decide to download my meditation application, which for me I was trying to hit my goals. Again, remember, I started off thinking about myself, my insecurities, and with my meditation application, I'm like, well, I like to meditate, and I would also like to read a Buddhist text called the Dhammapada, and I combined the two and said, every time I do a meditation, I will get rewarded with this. So here's the action, here's my reward. For me, it's great, but how many other people in the world have a similar desire? And even if they do, why would they want to use something that I've created? And I simply was not thinking about the customer. So the beauty of this process is the way I began to think about things shifted throughout the year. Eventually, I did get my meditation application into Google Play Store, but it took a lot more effort than what I thought, and that effort was not engineering effort. And that's a very important thing I pulled out. The hard part of getting that into a big marketplace had nothing to do with the technical aspects of creation. Everything was about recruiting users, sales, marketing, creating thumbnails, doing the getting on Canva and creating like fancy screenshots and making things presentable. All of that work was just as important, if not more important, than the technical work that went into creating the application. And that was a huge lesson. And projects I picked up after that, so I kept iterating every time I learned something. I realized, okay, this is how long it took me to build this. Now, obviously, it's because I was doing many things for the first time. I'm not an Android developer. And so the next project I said, well, this is going to be easier if you have a business partner, and that might be a better idea. And that was correct. It was great to have somebody else, but I didn't validate the idea. So it was a medication tracking application, and turns out that already existed. So me and that business partner, we decided to cull that project. Now, every time I culled a project, of course, I would have assets. And this is the great thing about everything I did last year. If I want to go and create something else in the future that even from a technical standpoint has any similarity with anything I did in 2024, it's almost like I have my own personal little library of code and projects that I can quickly spring something up from. And I have been doing that this year. Because I've got the code base and I'm more comfortable with doing things, even at the start of this year, I put up a website for my run club. Took me a day. I can just get things up and running extremely fast. It is very, very useful that I went through that period of figuring out how to do things that I was uncomfortable in as a software engineer who was predominantly focused on back-end work. So that was a huge breakthrough, and I'm grateful I did that. Then later in the year, I decided to run a minimum viable offer, got another business partner, and the whole purpose of a minimum viable offer is, okay, I've been creating products that haven't been calibrated to the market because, like I said, I've been thinking about myself. I realized that working in a team is better, but then I didn't validate the idea. So the next thing is work in a team, but go ahead and validate the idea. Now that was an incredible time for me because in validating the idea, I actually did this stunt where I went to George Street in Sydney CBD and I stood in costume handing out flyers, trying to validate an idea, trying to see how many people are interested in buying this product. And I did that in person. And it's kind of insane because no one would imagine you going from a 6-figure engineering job to quitting your job. And then when I was back in Sydney for a month, standing on the street, handing out flyers, trying to sell a business to consumer product for $20. And as insane as it was, that was such a powerful moment for me because I remember there was one day where I made a sale on the street to a complete stranger. The girl pulled out her credit card, went to the payments page of the website and pre-ordered the product. And I was like, holy shit, did this actually just happen? Did I actually just sell something to somebody in real life? And that was a huge breakthrough moment. Now, unfortunately, that particular idea did not go ahead because whilst I validated the idea, the business partnership wasn't well aligned. We had two different ideas of where something could go, or I was full-time, the other person wasn't. And so I'm grateful for that whole experience, but we came to the arrangement that this wasn't going to work in the future. However, even though it didn't work out and we ended up refunding all the sales, that was such an incredible experience because I personally, despite having spent an entire month working ridiculously, setting up things like back-end payment links and SQL queries to track how many people came to the checkout and abandoned it, and all these different metrics that we were using to optimize day by day, all the way to going and doing the flyers and the marketing and getting out on the street in costume to try and hand these things out. I learned so much from that process about people's psychology and what it takes to make people even be interested in an offer. And I ultimately took all the public risk for doing this. And even though people might look at me and say, oh wow, that guy's such an idiot, he quit his job to do dumb shit like this, I got so much more out of that experience. In fact, even though that particular project did not go ahead and that partnership dissolved, I feel like I actually got more out of that experience because I was the person who was the public face of it. I was out on the street and I was absolutely hustling. So I've internalized a lot of that knowledge. So it was a super valuable experience for me to do that. And then later in the year, I was just able to launch some free products to help people. So one of our local politicians in Australia brought up a bill that I didn't like. So I set up a site which allows people to generate PDFs that are Senate compliant so they can make their submissions super easy. And that was something I did because that's just a personal political interest of mine. But I was now more confident in my skills to be able to go and build something like that other people could use and find valuable. So even though I didn't hit my goal of launching 6 clean digital products, and I did not hit my 2K revenue goal, I still learned so much, both from the engineering perspective, from the sales perspective, the marketing perspective, even to getting my first sale. That was a huge breakthrough for me. I have never held a sales job in my life. Of course, everyone sells things. We've had to sell things internally. If you go to a job interview, you sell things. But I've never sold something in the business or person to consumer sense. I sold something that somebody was actually interested in, and it's because I was out on the street trying to reach out to them. So that was a very valuable experience. And of course, I ended up refunding their money because that business closed down in the form that it was in back in September 2024. But I learned a lot from trying to create 6 digital products. So that was a lot. That was a lot of me rambling about what I was doing in 2024. But I learned so much. And as I traveled around the world, I had periods of intense focus where I built things and periods where I took time off. And it was a really nice way to let the lessons sink in. And I was just in such a rush. Maybe that's the wrong word. I wasn't in such a rush, but I was so trigger happy. As soon as an idea came across my plate, I would jump in and go and try and build it. So the big thing that I was learning was you do need to measure twice and cut once, but I got to learn that lesson through experience. And even though that's not the most efficient way to learn things, I feel like there are some lessons where you can't learn them unless you're the one actually going and failing and you're willing to risk your own reputation to make things happen. So I'm very glad I did that because I got to challenge the way that I think about business, and I absolutely did. And so this year, I'm going to be trying to re-enter the corporate world. And whilst I do that, I'm still going to be armed with all the lessons I learned from trying to run small businesses in 2024. The other thing that really came out is I really need to be well incentivized, is trying to build a micro software as a service, or the micro SaaS. Is that really worth it? Or should I be trying to do something even bigger? Are bigger goals actually easier to achieve than the small ones, like setting a 2K revenue target? Maybe that just isn't a big enough goal for me to go chase after it. Maybe I need to shoot higher. So these are all things that I pulled out of that first goal. The second goal I had is I am healthier. Now you're going to notice that a lot of these goals, they're written in past tense. So the reason they're written in past tense is when I wrote them, this is something I started doing only in the last year or two, is I wanted to think about my goals and view them as if I had achieved them. It's much easier to visualize yourself having achieved something rather than saying, I want to get to 16% body fat. Say, I have achieved 16% body fat. You can almost picture yourself in the future in your mind having achieved it. So I said, in 2024, I built upon the improvements to my strength, my fitness, and my mental health. I'm visibly fitter with 16% body fat and sleeping 7+ hours per day. The benefits are I'm more energetic and capable of achieving higher order goals. Now, fitness and health in general was a very interesting goal throughout 2024 because it was not linear for me. Like I said in the last goal, there were periods where I focused on building my products. And I remember when I was living in Malaysia, for example, that entire 3-month period was me hustling. I had like a co-working space I was going to. There would be weeks I put 60 to 70 hours into them. I was not efficient, like I mentioned, because I was learning many things for the first time, but I got a lot out of that. Now, the counterpoint to that is during those periods, my health did suffer a lot more. I wasn't eating great. I wasn't necessarily sleeping great. I was very, very highly caffeinated for my entire period in Malaysia. I wasn't running as much. I was struggling to run with the heat and the humidity and the pollution. It just wasn't something I was used to. And there were definite periods where my health was not that great and I put on weight and just was not feeling very energetic and good about myself. At the same time, throughout that year, I came to the end of 2024 100% being the fittest I have ever been. Once I got back to Australia, I was able to really invest in my health. And like one thing I did throughout the year is I did all these amazing activities. I reviewed my Strava for the whole of 2024. And I was just so proud that, oh, look, I went for this really cute walk in Penang, Malaysia. I did a walking marathon around Angkor Wat in Siem Reap. I did not hire a tuk-tuk to go visit temples in Siem Reap. I literally walked and ran over 42 kilometers visiting temples. There were so many things I did that were just absolutely incredible. And even though I wasn't consistent on a maybe month-by-month basis, I was building up my strength and got much better at running, for example. And when I was back in Sydney for a month in the middle of the year, I started a no sugar challenge with a group of friends. So I got some friends involved and we did a 5K run every week. I just became a much healthier person and I was able to share some of my free time and knowledge and energy into helping other people achieve their goals. And that was a lot of fun. By November, I was running 20 kilometers every week. I was swimming 2 kilometers and I was doing 3 bodyweight calisthenic workouts every week, plus 60 push-ups every day. And I've still been doing that now. It's more than 2+ months since I started that. And I'm feeling absolutely bloody incredible. I'm looking better than I've ever looked. And I absolutely did hit that goal. Now, I didn't hit the 16% body fat, and I don't think my sleep is great at 7 hours per day. I definitely don't do that very well. I still struggle with that. But did I actually become healthier than I've ever been in my life? Yes. And it's a little bit sad, but I'm also happy I did it, that I got into the best shape of my life so far at the cusp of 30 years old. And based on my current trajectory, I know that's going to be even better in 2025. Knock wood that there isn't any sickness or injuries, but these things can happen as well. But I know even if they happen, I now have the tools and the mindset to work around those. God forbid if something happened and I couldn't run anymore, great, I'd figure out something else to do. Why? Because I have achieved some success now. This is a goal. Becoming healthier than you've ever been has been a goal that I've had on pretty much every year plan. And it is only last year in 2024, as I turned 30 years old, have I started to genuinely feel healthier than I've ever been. I was the kid who walked cross country in high school, and now I'm regularly running 20Ks a week. And when I was traveling throughout the world, I did so much more physical activity, walking, hikes, bike rides, swims than I've ever done. So 2024 was a great year, and I got to do all these fitness activities whilst in some really beautiful locations around the world, meeting great people, sometimes even just when I was back in Sydney, catching up with friends, but doing it over a run or a walk or a hike. I was able to do these things and I'm very grateful that I did. And that's one of the goals where I can objectively say that, yes, I did achieve it. And I'm looking forward to, again, building upon that for 2025. So I also said the third goal I had was I have strong relationships. So 2024 was interesting in the sense that for the prior 2.5 years, especially from when I joined the technology world and the startup world, I didn't really do any romantic dating. So now that I kind of quit and had opened up my calendar and became, as I mentioned, a time billionaire, given that for a limited period of time, I said I can do fundamentally whatever I want. And of course, I put some of that into work, building digital products and doing work for other people. But I also realized that, hey, you need to start focusing on your romantic relationships. So in 2024, I wrote, I have formed stronger familial, business, and romantic partnerships. After a long hiatus, I am dating with abundance. I'm assessing values and checking for long-term fits. The benefits, I am on track to cultivate the long-term relationships which will 10x my our collective potential. 2024 was an absolutely incredible year for relationships for me, even in terms of the relationships I have and were able to maintain. I look back at that year, everything from the start of the year where I got to attend a good high school friend's wedding and really reconnect with a lot of people from my past, from high school and university, all the way to forming new friendships and relationships throughout the year. And I did date with abundance. I'm happy to put that out there. And going through 2024, and I did an episode on finding a wife, you can go search for this, and how I'm using an algorithm to find this. It is something where I did really think hardly about what type of partner I want in the future. And I'm at a point where I'm not coming from a scarcity mentality. I've never felt more attractive than I've felt, but I also know that I need to become the person to attract the partner I want in the future. And 2024 just allowed me to really put all those values and skills together, because yes, dating is a skill. I think people underestimate how much of a skill dating is. It is about communicating, it is about connecting, it is about working out not just whether you're attracted to somebody, it's about picking up the social cues, are they attracted to you, and then deciding where you want to take that relationship. So there's a lot of skills, and I think meta skills, involved in the world of dating. Everything from explicitly going and approaching somebody or messaging somebody on an app to understanding their body language and their cues towards you if you do meet them in person. So there's a lot in that spectrum, and I'm very happy with how 2024 panned out. No, I did not find the mother of my future children. However, I definitely feel like I had the experiences and further developed the skills that I will need to be able to go and do that. And the most important thing I think I came out of 2024 is figuring out what values I want in my future partner. I'm not going to go into great depth in this episode on that topic specifically, but I do have an episode where I talk about how I am dating algorithmically. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can go and listen to that, but do check that one out if you're interested in how I'm going about doing that and how you can apply algorithmic dating to your own life. But yeah, so 2024 was a great year in terms of relationships. Of course, not everything's positive, and there are negative experiences in all domains, from stuff with family, stuff with business partners, and even in the romantic sense. But in spite of everything, I think I grew stronger. And there were many times where I prioritized a personal relationship with a person over having a business relationship with a person. And so I'm proud of myself for making those hard calls and going ahead. I definitely feel like I came out of that year as a better person, as a person who is more open to inviting people and bringing people in and reconnecting with people and just simply meeting new people. So that was a very positive thing, and I'm happy to say that I do feel like my relationships have become stronger. They have become healthier. Of course, they're far from perfect, and I don't think I ever will be perfect, but I'm very happy with the actions I took, and there are many lessons I can take out of 2024 in terms of relationships, especially in the romantic domain, that I know are just going to help me in the future. My last one that I had for 2024 was I learned a lot. So I said in 2024, I greatly expanded my knowledge, depth and breadth. So I wanted to learn things deeper and have a wider array of knowledge. and I said, as a software engineer, become more well-rounded and skilled. And in brackets, I put Amazon Web Services, computer science fundamentals, advanced data structures and algorithms. And if you're wondering why these are here, part of it is because I'm a self-taught developer. So I've learned the things which I've immediately needed for jobs, but maybe not some of the skills which people who go through a more formal education to become a software developer learn. So that's why that's there. And in general, I said I wanted to read over 50 plus books in many domains. So in terms of all of that, I can definitely say that I did skill up. I did a lot of these things. So on top of trying to build things and getting healthier and forming strong relationships, I really did become a better software engineer in general. I made sure I got through some technical literature that I had on my reading list for a while. In terms of total books read, I unfortunately didn't hit 50 books, but I'm not too concerned because what I did actually do was read over 25 books, and I took notes down for everything I've read. So when I was doing my 2024 review, I went through those notes, and for all the books that I thought were important enough to, I pulled out key lessons from the notes I took down. So it was a super valuable experience, and I just feel like the year that I decided to be a time billionaire, what better use was there to go and learn things, both in trying to run these small businesses, but also from a book, a more traditional sense. So I'm very happy with how that went. So as you can see, I did not achieve all of my goals. I did not even achieve my goals in the way that I thought I wanted to achieve them. But by aiming to do these things, I learned so much, and I'm very happy that I went through that process. Now, in 2024, I also wrote longer term goals for 2024 and beyond. And I said, look, I want to buy my own house. So I said, by the end of 2025, you bought your first home. This enables you to do everything you currently do at a higher efficiency and effectiveness without necessarily needing to travel. The next one was you found a life partner and family. And I wrote by 2034. So that's like a decade away. That's 9 years away. You will have found a life partner and formed a family with children. Together, you will achieve more than you could have alone, and my children will benefit from my life experiences and knowledge. And I wrote, I am liberated by my finances. I have created a future where me and my family have optionality and the ability to pursue the meaningful. And under that, I wrote down the targets I wanted to achieve. So these are literally numbers in terms of money invested in the stock market, and it goes all the way up from 250K by the end of 2025, all the way up to 4 million invested by 2035. Now, as you can tell, these are all stretch goals, but these are just things I put down that I would like to do in the long term, and it's good to look at these things and have them written down. Now, 2024 was interesting in the sense that, now I told you I took a round the world trip, and originally I had that trip planned just for 7 months. Now, the other thing I'm really extremely incredibly happy I did in 2024 was decide to extend my travels. So I came back to Australia at the end of July, so start of August, having done 7 months around the world. It was an absolutely incredible time. I lived in Penang, Malaysia for 3 months and visited a number of other countries on my round the world ticket and other tickets I bought. It was absolutely the journey of a lifetime. But during that period, one of the books I read was something called Die with Zero. And after reading Die with Zero, I realized, hey, I don't have a boss who's going to tell me that I only have 4 weeks of annual leave every year. And if I wanted to do some more travel, I could do this. And having read that book, I said, yep, done. I'm going to Vietnam and Laos. And I was in Vietnam for almost 2 months and then did 2 weeks in Laos on the way back. And doing that extra 2 to 2.5 months of travel was honestly incredible. I am so happy I made it out to Vietnam and Laos, and that was a trip where I actually got to have a couple of friends join me, and I made some friends during that trip who I caught up with back in Australia. It was also incredible just in terms of the things I saw and experienced. I remember doing the Ha Giang Loop in northern Vietnam and hiking through Sapa with my guide from the Black Hmong tribe. That was a 3-day, 30-kilometer hike. And these are experiences I know I'm going to look back and really relish. And I also do have an episode on Die with Zero and what I pulled out of that book. So I will also leave that link in the show notes. So I'm very happy that I extended that and went around the world. By the end of my travels, by the end of 2024, I had visited 11 countries and taken 26 flights. So on average, I was taking 1 flight every week. There were interesting little tidbits. I was able to experience business class for the first time, which was nice, which was a very small part of my travel, but and it is a vanity thing. I took a lot of economy after that, and economy is great. I love it. It helps me get around cheap. But there's just so many things I got to experience in that year, both from very vain things to experiences that and memories that I've created that I know I'm going to have for a long time. So deciding to extend my travels was absolutely incredible because I just got so much more out of that. So if I summarize my 2024, it is a year where I had a lot of adventure, I gained wisdom, and I gained a lot of confidence, both in terms of being vulnerable and putting myself out there when creating a product, even though a lot of the things I did last year did not succeed in the financial sense, they did succeed in helping me avoid those mistakes for the next thing I do. And I'd rather have made those mistakes in my past than have to make those mistakes in the future when there is more at stake than just me. So I'm very grateful for the year, and I feel very privileged to have had such an amazing 2024. So let's look at 2025, and with 2025, it is a bit different. I wrote at the top of my 2025 goals, so I have a high-level goals that I keep stuck in my diary. That's the format I used last year, and that's the format I'm using again this year, because it's something I can always look at. Every time I open my diary, at the start of my diary, I have my goals and long-term goals that I would like to achieve. So the big change here was I specifically wrote my 2025 identity and goals, because like I said, I want to move past just having the metrics. I want to focus on the systems, and someone who has a particular identity, their system will support that identity and vice versa. So somebody who is a runner will have a system where they regularly and routinely run. So any goals that are an offshoot of running, maybe it's achieving a faster time or doing a longer distance, will be supported by the fact that they have a system. And the reason I use running is that is something I've really gotten into. I'm glad I found it through accident, having done the Sydney Marathon accidentally in 2023. I've only really come into how much I enjoy running. I don't like doing it fast. I don't necessarily like doing it long, but I just like running. I don't like doing it competitively. I always tell my friends, I just want to go at a talking pace. But at the same time, I have started becoming better at it without inherently noticing. Why? Because I've made it into a system, and I want to do the same things with my other goals. Everything is about crafting an identity this year that support the systems that will help me achieve those goals. But even if the goals don't come immediately, I know that as long as I follow the system, over time, I will get closer, and that's what matters. So at the top of my 2025 identity and goal statement, I want to establish a tech sales career. Now, that is quite a deviation from what I've done in terms of my career so far. I spent a lot of energy and work becoming a software engineer, and last year I wanted to expand that skill set by launching my own end-to-end digital products. As part of that process, I realized how important sales and marketing was. And as insignificant as it might seem, when I had my first sale standing in costume on George Street trying to validate a product idea, and that girl pulled out her credit card and placed her trust in me to deliver something that would add value to her, and by this point I changed my mind on how I was thinking about trying to achieve things. It went from here's what I would like to achieve to how do I help this customer? How do I help them achieve their needs and their wants? Is this product the right fit for them? As I was going through that very first sale, that literal sale, that very explicit sale, not that I've never sold before. We all have. We've all convinced, persuaded. We've sold ourselves in job interviews as the best candidate. In spite of all that one sale where the girl pulled out her credit card and made a pre-order for a product that was about 20 Australian dollars, that made me realize that I wish I took a sales job earlier, and projecting that thought, that desire, that realization into the future, I know that I will regret not taking on a sales position in 10 years, in 20 years, because it is such an important skill set for what I would like to achieve. I realized that when I set my 6 digital products goal, that was coming from a purely engineer's mindset of I want to create 6 things. And one thing I'd like to add to that mindset and skill set is I would like to create things that people want and need and help them find and satisfy those problems. And that is part of why I want to make sales part of my mainstream career as I try to re-enter the corporate world in 2025. And I shouldn't use the word try, I will re-enter the corporate world in 2025. It's not particularly a hard thing to do for me. But I wrote in 2025, and this is what I wrote, so establish a tech sales career. In 2025, I broke into the world of software as a service, SaaS sales, was relentless about serving the customer, brackets customer first, and through service exceeded my software engineering income. Benefits: develop incredible skills in sales, connecting with people, and understanding the transactional side of business, which will supercharge my growth over the next 10 years. Because one thing I know I still want to do is create products and deliver services which make people happy, which solve their problems, which make their lives better, to put it shortly. And learning how to sell, learning how to market is a big part of that. So when it comes to software engineering, I know this is a skill set that no one can take away from me. I could go get a job doing anything else, and the fact that I've made technology my career for the last almost 5 years now means that I can confidently go and do something else and not worry about losing the skills or the lessons that I learned. But I know that I really want to hone my sales skill, and this might mean starting from the bottom, but I am hungry to get the skill, not just for the short-term reward of making more money than I was making at my peak as a software engineer, but I also want to develop the skills so I can serve more people in the future, identify their needs, and create products and services that reach more people than I've ever reached before. I learned so much by failing to create miniature businesses and products in 2024 that I'm like, if I can learn from the people who are amazing at this right now, I want to do that. There is a short-term motive for me that obviously I need to make money to live in this society, but my long-term motive is I want to add that powerful skill of selling to my tool belt. And I know that I am going to combine these things in the future to do something that I can't currently conceive of. But like the same realization I had when I was standing on George Street, Sydney CBD, wearing a Squid Games costume, selling a Korean color analysis product to pre-order and made my first sale, is that I wish I took a sales job before. You would not believe how much rejection I put up with on the street as people would pass me by. And over 3 days, I tailored the message I was getting out to not only increase the volume of flyers I was getting out to interested customers, but I made a sale on my very last day, and that was in 3 days. So I would like to go and face even more rejection in the world of technology. Obviously, I want to find products and services and companies that I actually believe in. I think that is a core tenet to what I'm trying to achieve, because I've definitely run into people who are trying to sell something where it is disingenuous and they might not even believe or use the product or service that they are trying to sell. And that's not the type of person I want to be. I do not want to be a sleazy salesman selling you a lemon. I want to be somebody who can see you, can identify your problems, your needs, your wants, and offer a solution, offer something to satisfy that, provided it is actually in your best interest. If it isn't, I want to send you on the path to where you can get that. That might not be me. I want to be a salesperson who is so good that I can afford to let a customer go because I know that the product or service I have is not the right thing for them, and still make an absolute killing, because when I do meet the right customers, I can help them understand the value of what it is that I'm selling or what either the product or service, and that actually suits their needs. So that's the person I want to become. I want to be high integrity, amazing at solving problems for people, because as an engineer, I did solve problems for people, but I realized that I really enjoy dealing with the people directly. And as an engineer, I still solve problems for people indirectly in terms of the product. I also solve problems for people directly by helping my team immediately and helping other departments in what they needed, be it training people when they needed to understand how to use the product and responding to critical incidents. But I just want to be at the forefront of that process. I want to be at the coalface, speaking to the customers and working my way to the point where in 5 to 10 years, I can walk away with that skill confidently and apply that to a problem that I've identified in the market. So establishing a tech sales career is the big thing that I want to do in 2025 regarding my career. Now, the next goal I had or identity is again very similar. I have strong relationships. It is slightly different from what I had in 2024. In 2025, I formed and maintained strong social, business, and romantic partnerships. I'm assessing values and checking for long-term fit. And this is the important distinction that I made from 2024. I am saying no to non-mutually beneficial connections. And that is a huge change. I have learned that I do not need to say yes to everyone, and my energy isn't always going to align with somebody else's and vice versa. And that is absolutely okay. I need to be more comfortable with saying no to things because it's not good for anyone. It's a waste of our time. It's a waste of our collective potential if we're not moving forward. So I think when I had formed strong relationships in 2024, it was more like a free-for-all approach, but now I'm being more selective about that and realizing where a relationship should not go beyond a certain threshold and being able to say no to a certain relationship because it just isn't working. And the benefits, I say, as I had in 2024, the benefits are I am on track to cultivate the long-term relationships which will 10x our collective potential. So super important, something I want. I am definitely dating intentionally this year. I'm applying the lessons I learned in 2024, and I'm not pressuring myself, but I am being very intentional about what I'm doing in a romantic sense, a business sense, and even in just personal platonic relationships. I'm being very careful and intentional about how I do things. So it's a great frame of reference I put out, but at the same time, I'm also being very open. I'm inviting more people to things. I am open to reconnecting with people, but there are caveats to this. Is it mutually beneficial? If something is harming either party, then we should not go ahead and do that. So my third one is I am healthy. In 2025, I built upon the improvements to my strength, fitness, and mental health. And the difference that I did for this is I focused a lot on identities. So I said I'm a runner, I'm a swimmer, I'm a walker, and a calisthenicist. I'm a great sleeper, a great eater, and a regular meditator. Benefits are I'm more energetic and capable of achieving higher order work, connections, and relationships. So I focused a lot on identity because I am all these things. And no, I'm not the best runner. I'm not an amazing swimmer. I'm not the best walker or calisthenicist, but I do all those things and I have systems that support those identities. So I actually completely removed the body fat goal. Now, of course, I would like to achieve visible abdominals. I think a lot of guys especially set that as a goal. I would like to manifest my highest physical being. But I've removed those explicit goals. I can still have them, but with health, I'm focusing more on the systems because I know that those results will come. If I've learned anything from 2024, especially in the last 2 months of 2024, it's just focus on the system. The results are going to come. Look after yourself. Don't make sure you don't injure yourself, but have a system that supports those goals. So for me, it's running 20 kilometers every week, swimming 2 kilometers every week, doing 3 body weight, or if I have access to a gym workouts, and doing 60 push-ups every day. That's who I am. I am the person who does those things. No, I'm not the best person. I'm not trying to be the best person at those things, but that identity is mine because I have a system to support it. So that's who I am. And my final kind of high-level goal for 2024 is 2 paid products launched. And there is a clear distinction from what I tried to do in 2024. Now, naturally, the number of products I'm trying to launch is much lower. It's not 6. Reason being, like I said, I'm going to be focusing on re-entering the corporate world in a brand new career, becoming an amazing salesperson, somebody who truly connects with the customer. But whilst I'm doing that, I want to be pulling those skills because I know I'm going to be learning a lot. I'm going to be learning a lot about consumer behavior, both consumer behavior from a business sense, if I'm selling a B2B product, or consumer behavior from a direct consumer sense in terms of individuals. I'm going to be learning a lot about that world and I want to be thinking. So I wrote in 2025, I launched 2 paid digital products, which are customer first. They truly deliver excess value. So that's really important because when I was talking about my journey building digital products last year, that originally came out of an insecurity that I was an engineer who could not build an end-to-end product. So it was about my insecurity. Then it was about, here's something that is interesting to me, a meditation app. Then it was like, oh, here's a great idea. Let's partner up with somebody. There are so many lessons I learned throughout that year. The most important thing I learned is you need to think about the customer, you need to validate the ideas. So measure twice, cut once. So I really liked the minimum viable offer that I did last year, but I realized measuring twice and cutting once doesn't just apply to the idea or the product or service that you're going to offer in the market, but it also applies to the way you structure things. Who are you getting involved in your project? What structure are you creating that business? Because you could have two people who actually go on to create something really well, but if you structure a business in the wrong way, it's going to disincentivize everyone and it's going to lead that project to fail, which is something I learned in 2024. So measuring twice and cutting once doesn't just apply to the actual business idea, but it applies to who you partner with, how you partner with them, and the structure of that business. So last year, I was just going and doing things. If somebody had an idea and I'm like, yep, I can come and join, that was really good. I got a lot of feedback in that process. I spoke to a lot of people, learned from a lot of people as I was reaching out, trying to solve problems so I could create digital products. But rather than just being gung-ho and just trying to execute, which is that's fundamentally why I think despite all the failures of 2024, it was actually an incredibly successful year for me, because I actually did go and execute. I did take the public risk. I was vulnerable with what I was doing. And even though it looks like a failure to everybody else, really, it's me making mistakes that I can avoid in the future on something bigger, on something better. So really good. I want to measure twice. I want to cut once. A big part of this means creating pitch decks and one-page business plans for anything I'm thinking about. And this is something I learned from somebody I spoke to last year, is that when you have an idea, write it down, go through and make a small pitch deck so you could tell a friend about it. And by doing that process and trying to sell it to somebody in a way that they might be interested in investing, you will actually figure out whether you yourself would invest in something. So I've realized as I go ahead and evaluate ideas for these two digital products, and I don't know what they are, I need to go ahead and do things like that, do the one-page business plans, do the pitch decks, and try to take myself out from the excitement of building something and really zooming out and thinking more like somebody who would invest in a business, even though I'm going to be the person building it. So I know my time is going to be very limited in 2025, but I would love to launch 2 paid products. And I said paid because last year, and this was also something where maybe it's why I didn't hit my revenue goal, is I actually wrote that I wanted a mix of free, one-off, recurring revenue products. So I had a couple of different models. I realized that for this year, when it comes to these paid products, and look, that doesn't mean I won't launch free products, but with regards to this goal, it should only be a paid product. And that's important because that means I have to think about the customer and why somebody would pay for that product or service. And ultimately, that means I need to deliver more value than what they are paying. Even with something like my meditation application, which was free, there was a cost associated with that. People would have to download it and they'd have to meditate, especially during my beta testing period. And my initial mistake was not considering the intangible, the non-financial costs that users would have. And so that's a huge lesson I learned in 2024. My longer term goals are very much the same. They're exactly the same that I had in my 2024 plan. So it's buy my first house by the end of the year, by end of 2025. That is actually a stretch goal for me at this point. Because for anyone who's been from an economy where you need a regular income to take out a mortgage, or you need a mortgage at all, you would know that you generally need to have a number of months that you've worked at a particular company, and that could be challenging this year. So it might not happen. The Sydney housing market also isn't particularly easy. But this is something that I'm putting here because I know even if I don't hit that goal, I can get to the end of 2025 and really think about what I can change and maybe make that one of the more immediate goals and go through a strategy to achieve that. So remember, having goals and ideas on your plans is not a bad thing. It's something that is going to help influence what you're actually going to achieve. And if you don't achieve them, you can look back at them and think about what you did wrong and what you might change. And like I said, my whole traveling the world on a One World rewards flight, taking this round the world ticket, flying around the world, was actually something that was on my year plan that I wrote all the way back at the end of 2019 for the years 2020 and 2021. And I did not achieve that goal of getting enough Qantas points to travel around the world and taking that trip in 2020 and 2021. I achieved that over 2 years later. So it took me like 4 years in total from having written it down to actually taking my round the world trip. But it's because I wrote that goal down that did eventuate. So I'm glad I did. I also still have found a life partner and family. So that's still on there, and I'm still liberated by my finances because I've gone ahead and invested. And I know that's going to be a stretch goal. So, but I'm happy to have these things. I'm happy to fail at reaching them because I would rather fail at trying to achieve something that's hard than be complicit in me not realizing my full potential. So that is what 2025 is going to be about me. For me, it is taking on a new direction in terms of my career. It is being very intentional with dating. When it comes to business and, well, anything I'm doing, I want to be measuring twice and cutting once. I want to take my fitness and health to the next level. I've finally built a system that works for me and that is delivering results, and I just need to focus on doing the work day in and day out and not being frustrated if my weight goes up one week or I don't feel as energetic the next week, because I know in the long run this is working and it will keep working. The lessons I've pulled out from 2024 I know is going to make the next decade better. And I think overall, no, it's not I know that the fact that I invested so much time and took that risk and made myself vulnerable with all the projects I was doing, that is going to lead to a lot of good things in the next 10 to 20 years to come. I still want to work on digital products, but in terms of my core professional skill, I want to be in the world of technology, but I want to be selling to the customer. I want to be programming minds instead of programming machines, and I want to do it in a way that is true to my values, that goes in line with being having high integrity, that really thinks about what the customer needs, and somebody who isn't going to take advantage of a customer who is uninformed. My goal as a salesperson is going to be to help people uncover their problems, and if I have a product or service that can help solve those problems, then I want to offer that to them. So 2025 is going to be a super exciting year. I'm very excited about it. For those of you listening at home, if you are listening to this and it's going to be late January, maybe later in 2025, if you feel like you set a bunch of New Year's resolutions and you haven't hit them, it's not too late to start. You will notice that I don't set resolutions. I focus on the systems and the identities now. I used to have resolutions because, much like most people, I would fall off the bandwagon. So make systems that are simple enough for you to keep following, but are uncomfortable enough that you're actually going to make progress towards what it is you want to achieve. So as I went through 2024, I had a tracking system where every 3 weeks I would reflect on each of my goals and I asked myself a few questions. For example, in terms of digital products, I had everything high level, from in terms of number of products launched or in active development to revenue, all the way to comments and challenges. In terms of being healthier, I was measuring things like sleep scores and things like pectoral skin fat, abdominal skin fold, thigh skin fold, body fat percentage, waist measurements, comments on fitness, comments on meditation practice. In terms of relationships, I broke that down into how I felt about dating. Have I done any group events with family, friends, or business colleagues? And the reason something like that was there, it was if I hadn't done anything, it was a reminder in the next 3 weeks, hey, maybe you should focus on reconnecting with other people. And in terms of learned a lot, I took notes on every book I finished and things I was learning specifically related to software engineering. So I documented a lot of things over 2024 and I was able to reflect on that. At the end of every week in my diary, I asked myself 3 questions. And I wrote 1 sentence on each of these. I wrote something, what happened for work, what I did for work, what I did socially, and what I did for fitness. So those were like my 3 reflections that I did at the end of every week. And I went through all of these notes that I had in my 2024 diary. I went through all the comments that I had in my 3 weekly tracker for 2024. I went through every Strava activity I did. And it was a very pleasant experience. Even the negative things, I was able to pull all those lessons out and it was super valuable. And that's something that I will be doing in 2025 as well. I'm going to set up something something. It is going to be a little bit simpler than what I did in 2024. The reason I was so elaborate and extensive in 2024 is I knew it was going to be a big year. Even if I wasn't a conventional success according to the goals I set, I knew at the start of 2024 that I was going to learn incredible lessons. I just didn't know what I was going to learn. I didn't know how I was going to learn those lessons, but I knew it was going to be a big year. And the seeds have been planted, and now in 2025, it's time for me to focus on the systems and water those seeds so they can come to fruition and I can go do bigger, better things and keep making more impact. So that is very exciting. One of the other things I did in terms of a review, which I think those of you who are listening to this, you can go ahead and do, is it was something called Year Compass. It's actually a free template where you can go and reflect over your 2024 and 2025. So I'll put the links to that in the show note. I highly recommend you going and doing this as well. Now, this has been a very long episode. So to those of you who've made it through it, I hope it's been helpful. I hope it's helped you think about the way you're thinking about your goals and what you'd like to achieve and how you're going to go about doing those things. And to all of you listening to this, Happy New Year, and I wish you great success on all your endeavors. You've just made it through another episode of Monologues by Hasi. It brings me great pleasure to know that you made it to the end. To listen to more episodes, subscribe on your favorite podcast app or visit monologuesbyhasi.com. Thanks for swinging by.